The garage was alive with the usual morning chaos, metal clanking, tires screeching, hydraulic lifts groaning under the weight of worn-out vehicles, and the smell of grease. Gasoline and sweat lingered in the air like a badge of honor. Harper's Auto wasn't just any repair shop in town. It was the garage where the toughest jobs were tackled, and where Harper ruled the floor with an iron wrench and a sharp tongue. Charlie had been running this place for over 3 decades, building his reputation as one of the best, but also one of the most intimidating. You didn't walk into Harper's Auto unless you had grit under your nails and a brain wired to diagnose engines faster than any computer. That morning started no different, until a figure appeared in the wide doorway, silhouetted by the rising sun and the dust clouds drifting from the nearby lot. She stood confidently, one hand in her pocket, the other holding a rolled-up folder. Her jeans were old but well-worn, a flannel shirt tucked into a thick belt, and her eyes were sharp under the shadow of a ball cap that read Rick's Garage, a name that used to mean something around here. Riley stepped forward, calm but intentional. Ignoring the glances from the OML crew who had paused their work to size her up, she didn't flinch when one of them chuckled, nudging his buddy with an elbow and muttering something about a beauty pageant contestant wandering into the wrong place. She just walked past them like she belonged, because deep down, she knew she did. She made her way toward the heart of the garage, where Charlie stood, hunched over a clipboard, barking instructions at one of his senior techs. Without waiting for an invitation, she cleared her throat. "I'm here about the apprentice job," she said, her voice steady, firm. Charlie didn't look up at first, distracted by the current conversation, but when he did, his expression froze for a moment, eyebrows arching. "You?" he said slowly, eyes narrowing. "What's your name?" "Riley Hayes," she replied. At the mention of the last name, a few mechanics turned their heads in recognition. The smirks dropped. Even the guy who'd made the beauty pageant comment blinked and straightened. Charlie's lips pressed into a thin line, the corner of his mouth twitching slightly. Rick Hayes' daughter. Riley gave a single nod. Thought that name sounded familiar. "Damn," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Rick was a hell of a mechanic, one of the best I ever worked with. The room fell eerily quiet, the noise of clanking metal suddenly replaced by the buzz of a memory everyone shared. Rick Hayes had been a legend in these parts, a man who could rebuild an engine blindfolded and was known for mentoring young mechanics. His sudden death in a car accident 2 years ago had shaken the entire garage community, especially Charlie, who had once called Rick his brother in everything but blood. Charlie cleared his throat. "You sure this is what you want, kid? This ain't no memorial. It's a war zone of oil, steel, and pressure. Ain't no soft landings here." Riley didn't blink. "I'm not here for a tribute. I'm here because I'm good, and because I know I belong." That struck something in Charlie, whether pride, annoyance, or curiosity. Even he wasn't sure, so he nodded once, then turned and pointed toward the back of the garage. "All right, you want in? Prove it. There's a V8 in Bay 3, dead as a rock. It's been there a week." My top guys took a crack and walked away, scratching their heads. "You fix that. We'll talk." Riley didn't hesitate. She tossed her folder on the bench, grabbed a pair of gloves from the hook, rolled up her sleeves, and made her way to Bay 3. The engine sat under the open hood of a cherry-red Dodge Charger, a beast of a car that hadn't roared in months. It looked like a corpse being prepped for autopsy. The guys gathered nearby, some with arms crossed, others shaking their heads. "She's gonna get eaten alive," one of them whispered. "Charlie just set her up for failure. Dead V8, another added. "Hell, we even tried swapping the ECM, checked all the wiring things possessed." Riley didn't even glance their way. She approached the engine with a practiced calm, studying it like it was speaking a different language. She was fluent. As she traced wires, examined connections, and probed the system with her multimeter, she mumbled quietly to herself. What they didn't know, what Charlie had likely forgotten, was that Riley had grown up on garage floors. Her father used to set her on a tire with a box of tools when she was barely 8 years old and challenge her to guess what each part did. At 10, she was helping him build engines for stock cars. At 14, she rebuilt her own dirt bike from scrap. Her hands moved fast, not rushed, but with the certainty of someone who had solved more puzzles than she could count. She pulled a rag from her back pocket, wiped a bit of grime from a connector, and checked the fuel rail pressure. "Weird," she muttered, eyes narrowing. Then she grabbed a flashlight and followed a hunch, crawling under the car and tapping at the bottom of the tank. 10 minutes passed. 15. By now, the mockery had turned into silence. Charlie stood at a distance, arms folded, pretending to scroll through his phone, but clearly watching every move. Then, without warning, Riley stood up, called for a socket wrench, and got to work recalibrating the ignition timing. She swapped out a small sensor from her own kit, one no one had, thought to replace because it rarely failed. A crankshaft position sensor. She wiped sweat from her brow, walked over to the driver's seat, and turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life like a dragon waking from a deep sleep. The noise blasted through the garage. Like a thunderclap, everyone froze. For a moment, no one moved. Then one of the older guys actually dropped the wrench he was holding. Riley stepped out of the car casually, arms folded, engine still purring behind her, a small grin forming at the corner of her mouth. Charlie slowly walked toward her, the smirk he had earlier now completely gone. He stood in front of her, glancing from her to the engine and back. "What did you do?" he asked, not sarcastically, but with genuine curiosity. "Your ECM was reading bad data from the crank sensor. It thought the engine was out of sync and shut everything down as a safety measure." Everyone assumed it was mechanical. It wasn't. It was electronic, Riley replied coolly. The guys behind her were speechless. Charlie let out a slow breath, running a hand through his thick gray hair. The engine kept rumbling as if mocking every failed attempt before hers. He looked at Riley again, this time with something more than surprise. It was respect, and maybe a little awe. Charlie stood frozen in front of Riley as the V8 engine behind her continued to rumble with perfect rhythm, its deep growl echoing through the stunned silence of Harper's Auto. The other mechanics, once so quick to judge and mock, now stared, wide-eyed, their jaws nearly touching the stained concrete floor. No one spoke, no one moved. Even the air in the room felt heavier, weighed down by the realization that something extraordinary had just happened right in front of them. Charlie took a hesitant step closer to the vehicle, leaning in as if to confer with his own senses that the impossible had indeed occurred. His hand reached out, lightly grazing the hood, as though touching a sacred artifact. The purr of the engine was unmistakable. Clean, powerful, consistent. It was alive again, and no one could deny who had revived it. He turned to face Riley, who stood calmly, arms folded across her chest. A streak of grease along her cheek, her expression unreadable, but confident. "You're telling me it was just the crankshaft position sensor?" he asked, still in disbelief. Riley gave a small nod. It was feeding the ECM bad data. Everyone focused on mechanical faults. No one looked at the sensor. I checked the signal output with my scope, saw it was off pattern, swapped it out. Simple as that. Charlie shook his head slowly, still trying to process the moment. The rest of the crew remained motionless, each of them grappling with the prideful sting of having been outdone, not just by a newcomer, but by the very person they had laughed at moments earlier. One of the younger guys, Tyler, finally broke the silence. "How'd you even think to look there? I mean, that thing never goes bad." Riley gave a slight shrug. "I didn't assume it couldn't. My dad taught me never to rule anything out without checking it myself. Besides, we once had a truck that acted the same. Took us 3 days to find it. I never forgot." The mention of her father, Rick Hayes, brought a hush over the crowd once more. Everyone remembered Rick. They remembered his brilliance, his generosity, the way he could make anyone around him feel like they were capable of more. And now, standing in front of them, was his daughter, cut from the same cloth, with the same fire in her eyes and the same grease under her nails. Charlie exhaled deeply, then chuckled, not out of mockery this time, but with genuine admiration. "Your old man would be proud, Riley. Hell, I'm proud, and I don't say that often." He extended his hand toward her, grease-stained and calloused. The same hand that had shaken countless deals, fired dozens of men, and built one of the most respected garages in the city. Riley stared at it for a moment, then gripped it firmly, earning nods and murmurs from the watching crew. "You're not starting as an apprentice," Charlie said. "You're a full mechanic. Today, you just taught every guy here, including me, a lesson." As their handshake ended, the rest of the garage slowly began to stir again. Some returned to their stations, still stealing glances at Riley, while others approached her with hesitant smiles, offering quiet congratulations. Tyler, still stunned, walked up to her holding a fresh bottle of water. "You, really showed us up," he said sheepishly. "Nice work." Riley took the bottle and smiled. "Thanks. But it's not about showing anyone up. It's about doing the job right, that's all." Meanwhile, word had already begun to spread. One of the younger mechanics had filmed part of her repair without her noticing and uploaded it to a private group chat for local gearheads. Within an hour, it had been reposted to a public forum with the caption, "Girl walks into Harper's Auto, revives a dead V8 in 30 minutes. The absolute legend." The post caught fire. Enthusiasts from all over the state began commenting, tagging friends, speculating about how she'd done it. By the end of the day, the video had racked up over 100,000 views. Customers began calling Harper's Auto, asking if the girl mechanic was available to look at their vehicles. Some just wanted to shake her hand. Others offered to bring in cars no one else could fix. A local news crew even stopped by the following afternoon after catching wind of the viral story. Riley was overwhelmed by the attention but remained grounded. She didn't care about fame, views, or interviews. She cared about honoring her father, about proving that skill had no gender, and about earning her spot on that garage floor through hard work and real results. Charlie, watching the influx of customers and admiration pouring in, pulled Riley aside a few days later. "You've changed this place," he said. "And not just because of that engine. You reminded these guys and me what it means to really think, to stay humble, and to never underestimate someone based on assumptions." Riley nodded quietly, grateful but still laser-focused. "I'm just doing what Dad taught me." Over the next few weeks, Riley became an irreplaceable part of the Harper's Auto team. She took on the hardest jobs, often completing them faster and more accurately than the veterans around her. But rather than rubbing it in, she offered help, taught the younger guys tricks she'd learned over the years, and slowly earned the deep respect of even the most stubborn crew members. One afternoon, Tyler approached her with a grin. "Hey, Riley," he said, "I got a weird noise coming from a 2014 F150. Mind taking a look with me?" She smiled. "Let's do it." Slowly but surely, the culture of the garage began to shift. There was less ego, more collaboration, more curiosity, less pride. And it all traced back to the moment one girl walked into a shop full of doubters and turned an impossible engine into a living, breathing machine. One move, that's all it had taken. Not just to restart the engine, but to jumpstart an entire team's mindset. Riley never asked for praise, never wanted special treatment. She just wanted a place where she could do what she loved. And now, thanks to one unforgettable moment and the courage to face down skepticism with skill, she had it. Charlie often stood by the bay doors in the evenings now, watching Riley work with the team as the sun cast long shadows across the garage. He'd smile to himself, remembering Rick's words years ago. "My girl's gonna change the world one day, Charlie. She might do it with a wrench, but mark my words, she's gonna do it." Turns out, Rick had been right. Riley wasn't just a mechanic. She was a spark that reignited belief in something bigger than machines. She was proof that real talent doesn't need to shout it, only needs a chance to turn the key.